Hi, this is the first of several short presentations using PowerPoint over Blackboard to introduce you to some of the basic concepts of how to be successful in the respiratory therapy program. We're going to go through several things. First is just how does one define success in this program? One definition could be passing all classes with a grade of C or better because that's what's required to continue. Another could be completing all the classes in the program, graduation from the program, passing the CRT, which is the exam needed to obtain a license. Another measure of success is being able to obtain and then to keep a job. Certainly the one that is most reflective of the level of achievement is passing the examinations to obtain the registered respiratory therapist credential, the credential of excellence for respiratory therapists, and the ones for which you will be prepared. Another is one that I kind of gravitate to myself is to advance and excel within the respiratory therapy profession. All of those are measures of whether someone is successful in the profession or in the program. We want to talk just a little bit also about who is responsible for what as you proceed through this program. You as the learner and Larry and I as your teachers have very different roles, and I want to talk just a little bit about those to clarify some of the things about that. By and large, the bottom line really comes down to the fact that you are responsible for your learning. There's only so much that I as a teacher can do, and most of the work that it takes to learn is on your shoulders. Very basic thing is I cannot force anyone to learn anything. I can create assignments, I can hold people accountable by giving tests, I can expect certain things of you, but if an individual chooses not to learn something, they may choose to not learn that. You can, however, compel me to teach. There's no way that you can learn some of these things without the interaction with the teacher. There's a great deal of the information that you can learn on your own by reading, by doing some research, by gathering information, and by paying attention. And it's my job and our job as teachers to create the environment in which you can learn, in which that learning can take place. So our job really is to create a situation where you can learn. Your responsibility then is to take advantage of that learning environment and those learning opportunities. So, as I said, my responsibility is to establish a learning environment. I need to be prepared. I need to have good knowledge of the information. I need to have knowledge of learning theory and how people learn. I need to be able to figure out how to take information and put it into language and into a way in which you as a learner can understand that. We need to be organized so that the information is presented in a fashion and in a sequence that enables you to learn. All kinds of information can be presented, but if there isn't some rhyme or reason to the sequencing of it, it makes it more difficult for you to learn that information. I have a responsibility to periodically assess how well you are learning. Quizzes, tests, assignments, a variety of things give us that ability to assess the learning of the students, and from that be able then to modify or change the things that we do to make sure that things that are not being learned or are not learned correctly can be corrected. Unlike a lot of classes that you may have had to this point in your education, everything that you do in this program builds upon previously learned information. So your experience may have been, if you took an anatomy class, we've got a section dealing with the skeletal system. You learn a bunch of bones and things about those bones. And once you have taken the test and done the assignments on the bones, you move on to another system, perhaps the nervous system. And you may or may not ever be asked to go back and remember anything about the skeletal system, because from this point forward you're going to deal with different systems. Well, everything you're going to learn in the classes this first term in the program is going to be built upon as we go to the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth terms of the program, and realistically going to continue to be built upon throughout your career as a respiratory therapist. So we also have a responsibility to hold you accountable for that learning. When you finish the program, you will take an examination to obtain a license and some additional credentials, and that test only is able to evaluate a piece of what it takes to be a good respiratory therapist. We are responsible in the educational process to assure that you can interact appropriately with people, that you can evaluate at the bedside the patient and changes in the patient based upon care that we provide. We also have a responsibility, and you'll have an opportunity at several points throughout the program to provide us some feedback, to take a look at how we're doing, to provide us some input. Each year we do things differently based upon feedback from students the preceding time that class was taught. I have a responsibility to make the learning process something engaging, to create again that environment and that opportunity for you to learn. It is not my job to be an entertainer. It's not my job to make sure that I can keep everybody's attention. Some of that responsibility is on you. I do have a responsibility to not stand and drone on forever. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we address the various learnings, various learning style of the students in the classes. You were asked to purchase and will be completing a learning style inventory, and that's information that we use then to vary the way that we present information. One of my I don't know what the right term is. One of the things that I wonder about, I guess is the term I'll use, is I hear from many students that they learn by doing. They don't learn by reading. They don't learn by listening. We have a fantastic lab with tremendous equipment available to you for that hands-on doing learning, and we spend a bit of time with it in scheduled labs. But for that person who is the kinesthetic or the learn by touch or learn by doing sort of person, it takes time working with the equipment. And I see people who say, well, I only learn by doing, but they don't spend very much time with the equipment, with the devices, and they don't really have the opportunity then, if the way they want to learn or prefer to learn is by hands-on. You really need to take advantage of the hands-on opportunities that are available to you. Your responsibilities basically are to come to class prepared to learn. That involves several things: being rested, having read the assigned information so that you have the background, having completed the objectives, and we'll be talking much more in other areas about the use of the objectives that we distribute to you. You have a responsibility to actively engage in class. That means paying attention. That means listening. That means when another student asks a question, paying attention both to the question and the answer, not zoning out into a different conversation or something else. It involves not being distracted by technology while you're in the classroom. It's very easy, and many of us are dependent upon our smartphones and our other electronic technology devices for everything that we do in our lives. But we do need to shut down some of that stuff and not be worrying about what's happening on Facebook or texting with friends while we're in class. We need to actively engage with the material, because class is really designed to take basic information that you have learned from reading and gathering information from other sources and apply that. How do we use that particular skill or that information or that calculation? How do we use that as a respiratory therapist in a day-to-day practice of the respiratory care profession? You have a responsibility to complete additional assignments and other things that will be provided to you. The purpose of those assignments is going to be to enable you to practice with information, practice with skills, practice with a variety of things so that you can learn how to apply that information. As I said earlier, you are responsible for your learning. Nobody else is going to be responsible for that. You have a responsibility to ask questions that help clarify for you information that is being discussed, questions that relate to what's going on in class. Sometimes a question may come up that is not directly related to what we're doing in class. It's not that it isn't a valid question. It may not be answered at that exact time because it would actually take us away from what we're trying to accomplish. But questions should be asked. And if sometime you're told that, well, that's not something that we can go into right now, generally what will happen is at the end of class, you and the instructor may discuss that and talk more about that question. You need to contribute your experiences and ideas. The bottom line, both Larry and I have a lot of experience in respiratory therapy and working as respiratory therapists, but the class as a whole has more total experience and more total knowledge than any one given instructor, and you need to contribute and share with the rest of the class. The other thing is you really need to be thinking about what's being discussed in class. Not just trying to quickly scribble information on a piece of paper, not just writing down whatever the instructor wrote on the board or seemed to emphasize. Everything basically that we're going to spend time on in class is important. It is something you need to know. It is something that's going to contribute to your ability to function as a respiratory professional. You also need to know your own learning style, know the ways that you prefer to learn, and you need to work on other ways of learning. You may have a preferred style, but that's not the only way that you can learn. You can learn by many, many different methods. And that'll conclude this first section.